We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you shows. I don't know if we can say in-depth film breakdowns this time of the year. We'll be bringing you shows from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I'm joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I genuinely thought you'd forgotten how to do the intro, Shane. I was like, wow, it's been that long. We've just given up. Shane's forgotten. I feel like you're very good at the old hosting thing. Like you're pretty consistent.
I guess we can't even say every week anymore. It's been so long since we've done a show.
Sort of just given up, like the NFL season does. It's a very busy time covering pro sports. So when you take your downtime when you can get it. I say downtime. I've also gone back and watched like every single Eagles draft pick, and including like 7th rounders, etc. I'm not doing UDFAs this year because I've decided that that's a step too far. But we've just spent like 20 minutes talking about random stuff, and we said we'd be quick today. I've also got to bring up another bit of random stuff, Shane, that's completely unrelated to Philly, which I'm sure everyone will love. For any UK fans out there and any Patreon members, they know I'm not just an NFL fan, obviously a big football fan over here. My team, which many of you know are Arsenal, has a chance to actually win it all, like now as we speak, not on air. But we're not playing, otherwise I would not be recording. But for any football fans out there, they will know that the team that we are up against are playing. And if they do not win, we end up winning the league tonight. So if you see me suddenly very scared or emotional or like very happy, it's not because you've either said something really bad that I disagree with. It is because things are going either very badly or very well. So I'll get that out of the way. If you make a point and I suddenly shake my fist in anger, I promise it's not. I'm not that upset at your take on the Washington Commanders 4th round pick. It could be that something's happened outside the football universe. So there we go. Any football fans out there know exactly what I'm going through as we speak. So it's all good fun. We all love being sports fans.
So if the other team loses, you win by default?
Yeah, we got one more game left, and if we win it, we win. Done. So technically, this doesn't technically matter. But if they don't win today, even if they draw, we have this thing in Europe called like draws when no one wins. I know you Americans don't like that. Someone's got to win.
Yeah,
but we have a thing called a draw. As if the team
one of many issues with soccer. But go on.
If City do not win, which the game will be over in like an hour and a half, we will be champions. So we would officially have won, which is very unlike US sports, isn't it? We could win something tonight without playing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you want them to win so you get the opportunity to win on the field?
If you are like a dynasty and you constantly win, I think you want your team to win, like playing it. But my team hasn't won for like 22 years. And I've not seen us win in basically since I was a kid. So I take anything. Save the weekend stress. I don't care if we don't play today. We played last night. We won last night. That was good fun. I'm more than happy for it to just end with a total lack of emotion. Need to lay in bed in like 3 hours, stare at the ceiling for probably about 5 hours and just grin. So there we go. We said we'd be quick. We've already wasted 3 minutes on something completely unrelated to football. Well, American football, which is always good. Shall we introduce our guest right before I keep talking?
I don't know. I'm enjoying listening to you talk about watching a sporting event for 3 hours that ends 0-0 and somehow that being fun.
Wait till you hear about cricket, Shane. Then we can talk. Wait till you hear about 5 days of an ending in a draw of 8 hours a day. Yeah, that's proper British.
All right. Well, without any further ado, we have talked soccer. We haven't said hi to BLG. We are joined by Jonny's boss, the editor-in-chief of Bleeding Green Nation. It is Brandon Lee Gowton. Give him a follow on Twitter at Brandon Gowton. I always feel stupid saying that because he's got all of the Eagles followers already. But, you know, on the off chance you've not heard of this guy, go give him a follow. BLG, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'll take every single follow I can possibly get. So thank you for the plug there. You know, I just had a full English breakfast, Jonny, for the first time ever.
First time?
Wow. And you know, Philadelphia, it was in Philadelphia. You know, it wasn't actually in England proper, but there's a place in Philadelphia called Stargazy, and they have a bunch of British dishes and whatnot. And I went there with my friend a couple of weeks ago. We had a full English breakfast with, I guess, what you fully expect from that. And it was pretty good. I liked it. Yeah. So there's my little...
Was it actually a full English breakfast?
Yeah.
Now I'm intrigued. What's in the breakfast?
I'll send you a picture.
All right.
I don't have my
judge it
phone
off
on me
air.
right now, but I'll send
Judge
you
it
a
off
picture.
air.
Yes.
It's
I was
hard
gonna
to
say,
screw up, really.
By all means, let's do 5 minutes on an English breakfast too. We got nothing else to do. It's
Have you
the
ever
off
had one,
season.
Shane? That's the real question.
I have not.
Wow, really? I don't know why that surprises me. I don't know why, which it shouldn't, because they're sort of terrible in some ways. But yeah, that's a big deal over here. You can't walk like 3 minutes without seeing a little cafe doing full English. It is, very quintessentially British, I would say. So there you go. Place in Philly doing English breakfasts. And there's a Philly bar in London, of course. So what a wonderful world we live in. I'm going to try and get down to a game there this year. Actually, I did last year as well. Met a couple of Patreons, but might try and do something bigger. So anyone listening lives in London, pick an Eagles game next year. There's not many at one. We'll get into that, but pick one of them. And we will definitely end up there next year.
All right. Well, let's dive into the content for today's show. So you guys have heard Jonny and I's thoughts on the Eagles draft class, our initial thoughts on the podcast feed. You've seen some of our our All 22 videos on the Patreon, but we wanted to give BLG a chance to share some of his thoughts and insights into the Eagles draft class. And then we're going to sort of roundtable our way through the rest of the divisional draft and end with a brief schedule talk. BLG, let's dive in to your thoughts on the Eagles draft class. So the Eagles, you know what? I probably don't need to read the picks. Everybody knows the picks. So take us back to the draft, the immediate aftermath. What was kind of your overall thoughts as you look at the Eagles draft class and the trades? Obviously, Jonathan Grenard factors into it, the fits. What do you kind of expect from this group this year? I'll just throw it out there. Whatever you want to talk about with them.
Yeah, I'll start with Grenard because I'm really excited by that trade. I think that's an underrated addition in terms of a league-wide focus. I think Eagles fans have an idea that this guy is at least pretty good, but I think even they might be kind of sleeping on him a little bit, in part just because of the timing of the trade. It happens like during day 2 of the draft, as opposed to if that move happens, maybe on the first day of free agency. That's not that it's perceived entirely different, but there's more juice for it, I think, at that point in time. So I thought that was a really good addition. They needed a more proven edge rusher in that room. They signed Arnold Ebiketie. I don't want him starting for the Eagles. That's not a good outcome to me. But if he's your 4th best edge rusher, then yeah, I like that addition. Everything else on the depth chart suddenly starts to fall in place. And I know his sack production was lower last year, and Jonny just had a piece on BGN.
Good plug.
Breakdown. That was a great article about how, some of that speaks to him maybe struggling to turn, pressures into sacks at some level. But when you look at his pressure rate over the past 2 years, including even a quote unquote down year with the sacks last year, still incredibly high. And I believe he was 2nd in pressures in 2024, only behind Myles Garrett. So this could be a pretty good player for this defense. And you lose Jalen Phillips, you need someone, you got him. I'm excited about that move. The draft picks themselves. Mekhi Lemon, I was such in a weird headspace when they drafted him from a standpoint of it just felt like this was going to be the year. They finally took a tackle, and I don't think they needed to force that at that point in time because I think you're looking at Max Ihannator as the best option for the Eagles, where they would have been picking there. Ended up going to the Steelers, who apparently thought they had Mekhi Lemon and indeed did not jump the gun, safe to say. Lemon's an interesting player to me in that I get the appeal. I like the football character, work ethic, toughness, mentality, standpoint. His coaches at college have talked about how, he played defensive back early on at USC, and they kind of like that. It's one of the points that speaks to his willingness to be a team player and help out, and his toughness and all of that. I liked all of that stuff. I think that's important for players to succeed in the NFL, to have that kind of mentality. At the same time, I think some of the things that make him good were, as I was watching it, in terms of the contested catch, in terms of just some of the run after the catch stuff, I wonder how it translates to the NFL. I'm cautiously optimistic on that, but I think where I've landed on Lemon is that I think we're going to find out quick if he can actually be really good or not. I don't think we're going to have to wait and see. And I know he's a young guy, so I don't want to just say his career is definitively written after one game or something. But I do think we're kind of going to get a really good picture of if this guy can play or not, right away, as opposed to him kind of, being a guy who takes time. I know you guys have already talked about a lot of the picks, but I don't want to just go through the whole draft class as a whole. I guess let me pose a question to you, even though it's your pod. Can you see the Lemon skepticism a little bit there, or do you think that's off base?
Is it skepticism with him or with fit?
I think both. I think there is some of those things, how he won. I wonder to the extent that translates to the NFL. And like, I don't think he needs to be the best receiver in the NFL to justify the pick.
No.
But is this maybe more of just like a quality starting wide receiver versus like a really good starting receiver?
Like, I'll go first, Shane, if you don't mind, just very, very briefly. I think this draft class was so weak, and it's really hard to compare draft classes. I sort of don't like talking about in like weak and strong terms, but I think realistically, like what they got him at 20, I think in maybe another class that's a late mid-30 pick or something. I think he's very clearly like a 2, which I think is fine. I don't think you have to draft like a 1. Like, I think he's pretty safe because I think he does things well, like separate and catch the ball really well, that is hard to like bust without off the field problems, et cetera, that can plague receivers. I think the fit one is one that is just so hard to talk about because we just don't know. So I almost find it like so difficult to talk about any player. Like the Eli Stowers pick, as you're going to get to in a sec, just totally shocked me because I was like, well, I really didn't think they would go for that profile. And it makes me think, do we actually know what they're going to be next year? So, like me personally, I think Lemon's pretty safe, but I do agree with you. There might be like a cap of upside, but I think in this draft class, I think there was a cap of upside in the top 5. Like, in all honesty, like, I think once you got out of the very, very top, I think the upside, I think even the first pick, the QB might be, when you look at upside, he doesn't have like top 5, top 8 QB upside, arguably. Like, I think it was just that kind of a draft class that was like, you take what you can get in the first round if you get a good player. I don't think there were many special players. What about you, Shane?
Yeah, I like the Lemon pick from a player perspective. I think he's got a high floor. I won't say like high floor, low ceiling, because I think he could be quite good, but I don't see him as like a future, wide receiver 1. Maybe he becomes like a 1B. I think he could be a good wide receiver too. So I think he's a solid player that is going to be solid in the league at the floor. The fit I question because the majority of his work was over the middle of the field, which is not something that the Eagles have ever done with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback. And he also pretty much lines up exclusively in the slot, which is a place they've used Devontae Smith a lot. Now, I think Devontae Smith is going to be your outside receiver, and I think he's going to be awesome at it. And I'm a little bit on an island with that in terms of I just think Devontae is going to go crazy this year. So I like Lemon. I like the pick. I question the fit, but I think it, along with the Stowers pick, which you're about to talk about, make it really clear the offense is headed in an entirely different direction. And so, we'll see how that works out. But I liked the first round pick. The second round pick, we don't necessarily have to get into my reaction to that on draft night. But
what was gut reaction, BLG? On like a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked Stowers?
Well, the last thing on Lemon first is that I do think part of what makes him good in part of the profile is that like he can handle volume. And that's not necessarily like the most sexy attribute in and of itself, but it's ultimately very good and important, especially when you're looking at the stat sheet by the end of the year, just being able to handle that amount of volume. So that's the one thing I'll say in terms of maybe like just not being quite as excited as I wanted to be for him that I think might be going underappreciated. On Stowers, I wasn't shocked from a standpoint of like, I think, a lot of people were talking about that was a entirely possible name they would go at that point in time. Obviously, you looked at the board at that time and you saw the safety there from Toledo, Daniel McNeil-Warren, and you look at the safety room and you're like, okay, that seems, and just not even just that, because you can get into a debate about positional value, but just from a standpoint of consensus value, which is something the Eagles have clearly valued in multiple drafts now, especially they've kind of been drafting way better than they used to under Howie Roseman, I think in part because they've just not overthought it at all. With Stowers, I think this is a pick, like this guy is going to take time to me in terms of realistic best case scenario. This is not someone who even played a major, like his Vanderbilt coaches did not have him on the field for just snap counts, like for significant portions of the game. Like that raises a red flag to me in terms of, it's not even just that he's not the best blocker in the world, because that's not the thing. It's just like the coaches didn't even trust him to be on the field to do a lot of that stuff in a lot of cases, which That certainly doesn't help his development, by the way. That's not, their top priority necessarily, but for the Eagles, it would have been nice. So it's a big projection to me. And I think it's something that is going to take time, and he's just not going to hit the ground running.
Yeah, it's funny because I see it like the exact opposite. Like, I really didn't think they were going to take a safety. I kept like wanting them to, but even when McNeil Warren was there, I was like, we spoke about this, but I just didn't think they were going to do it. I just really didn't see Stowers as someone they were going to look at, which in hindsight was stupid because they're all on 1-year deals, like every tight end they've got. So there's a clear need there, and he can obviously split out wide and play a little bit of X as well. And you're losing AJ Brown, and Johnny Wilson might not be very good, so there is a need there as well. But I don't know why. I'm still not really over it. And I'm still like convincing myself because I used to love that kind of player. Like 5 years ago, I wanted to draft him in the first. I love that player. Football seems to have changed the last couple of years to this big like blocking tight end world where it's so valuable in the run game. And I'm sort of going back 5 years and telling myself, but look how fun he is. But I do get Shane's skepticism, which is like, tight ends that don't block aren't the in thing these days. Like Kyle Pitts has games where he gets like 150 yards and no one thinks he's any good. It's just, is he like, and he was a freak athlete coming out. Like Kyle Pitts still had 1,000 yards last year. No one would say, oh, got to go and get a Kyle Pitts. So it's a weird world. Maybe sometimes we're reading too much into it, but yeah. Have you recovered, Shane, or are you still angry?
I mean, by the time we talked about it last time, I said, if you just set to the side that the Eagles aren't going to take a safety because they absolutely don't care about the position whatsoever, then, and you tell me, okay, then they're going to take Eli Stowers, I still have concerns about just complete inability to block or to line up in line. But I wrote in my scouting report for him that the gap between his pass catching ability and his blocking limitations is massive, and it just makes him a tricky evaluation.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, they went and got the Bolitnikoff Award winner, and I forget what the tight end award is, but Mackey? I don't remember. Yeah. So they got theoretically the best wide receiver and the best tight end in college football last year. And you talk about all the early capital invested on defense over the last few years. And so you can sell me on that. Now I want to see how he's going to get used. And I'm obviously going to be comparing his career to like Emmanuel McNeil Warren and thinking about it if safety becomes a massive issue this year. But if I just set aside, my initial reaction had a lot less to do with Stowers and a lot more to do with like the safety was right there. And so, with time, I just circled back to the Eagles just don't care about safety. They just don't. And so,
yeah,
that part is what it is. And so I'm excited to see how they use Stowers. And I think he could be a pretty big weapon for the offense if they use him right. And like you said, only tight end under contract for more than a year. So hopefully it works out and he's a great player. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's like a really good receiving threat. He's just got a lot of growth to do as a blocker.
I think he's the kind of player where your lovely reports, BLG, your training camp reports are going to be fascinating because we're going to find out pretty early on. You can't hide. If they want him blocking, he's going to be blocking. Like, you're going to see it in training camp. They're not going to just line him up out wide to hide it. Like, I think if he really is going to develop as a tight end, I think you'll have to see like progress relatively quickly. And tight end's a hard position to learn. So I'm sort of fascinated to see how much receiver he plays, how often he spits out. That's the kind of thing where training camp's really cool. So he's one that like I think everyone's going to be watching preseason and everyone's going to be reading reports training camp, not even see how good he is, just where he stands on the field and how they use him. Should we move on, BLG?
Well, one quick thing on tight end. I have it still is I really like that undrafted rookie free agent tight end they drafted or signed, Daquan Wright from Ole Miss. That guy popped to me. I would take a look at him, Johnny. I know you said you're not going to get into the UDFAs too deeply, but I really liked him a lot.
Now, I normally go around the UDFAs, and actually, me and Shane weren't going to do a show on it. And I was like, look, they're always rubbish. And then we Googled the last 2 years I've done UDFAs, and I was like, the Eagles actually get some decent players from UDFAs. So I probably should. It was such a bad draft class. I got the feeling like, is there anyone there? But I will take a peek. What did you like about him? Not that we're expected to talk about him now, but just like profile.
People talk about like this guy will run through a brick wall, but mean it, metaphorically. I think this guy might actually run through a physical brick wall. Like he just like takes on defenders. Like he has reckless abandon, played through a shoulder injury last year, but still was like, again, like ran through tackles. can contribute as a blocker. Just really liked what I saw from him in terms of it looked good as a pass catcher. Obviously, there's a reason he doesn't get drafted, but to me, I was like, in a weak draft class, I'm surprised a team just didn't take a chance on him at some point.
It is interesting, I must admit. I know we're not getting into day 3 now, but when I watched Wisniewski and even like James Newby, they also, I didn't realize this until I watched them, of course, they didn't get invited to the combine. And it seems sort of weird because you look at some of their profiles and you're like, I'm surprised. And I do think that matters because teams don't get the profile, do they? They drop down like analyst ball because they're not there. There's less buzz about them. And it is weird. Some players drop and you're like, is there something we're missing? You don't know what goes on behind the scenes and stuff, like personal life agents and stuff. But I will peek a look and see what I think. I've not heard anyone else mention him. I've not heard any buzz about the Eagles UDFA class really at all. So I will take a look at him. And then I guess you were not surprised at Markel Bell. I definitely was not, because I think you were like me that you thought tackle was going to be the pick early on. Were you surprised they waited as long, or were you sort of like once they got out of round 1, it was always going to be a little bit of a wait?
Yeah, I think where tackles kind of just go usually, it's almost like a dead zone. Not that they never get drafted or never work out in the second round, but it's kind of like you either get the good ones really early or you're kind of just waiting a little bit at that point. And I think, where they took him is certainly a reach relative to the consensus board, but I think they know that going in and being like, well, we have to kind of do this because we're not going to be able to wait longer. So I think that's okay. And I'm interested. He might be the only player on the Eagles roster bigger than me. We'll see when I'm standing next to him at training camp. Certainly taller. Or the question of height, not a question of size. There's certainly guys who are.
I was going to say, I think he's bigger than you in general. That man is big. Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Yes, I think you guys have talked about it. He almost might be too tall based on leverage and his frame and everything. At the same time, like when you're that massive, maybe it kind of just like, you don't even necessarily need to be amazing because you're just so huge. Like we kind of saw that to some extent. And, he wasn't an ideal starter that I think they want him to, that they want Bell to be. But like King Dunlap back in the day, it was just like a massive tackle who wasn't that great and got drafted in the 7th round, but like had a respectable NFL career, I think in part just because he was huge and had big size. And there are other examples of that too in the NFL, guys who like aren't the most proficient players, but are just massive human beings who,
great analysis. It's just they're hard to run round.
They're huge.
They're just big. They're just
so
big.
I like taking a chance on him. I don't know that I'm like, I don't buy that like this is definitely Lane Johnson's replacement as much as he has a chance to be that guy. But my expectation in terms of keeping the bar low is more of like he might be, Fred Johnson of the future. And I think
just quickly, I listened to Fran Duffy speak about him as well, and he was the same as me in that he had Cameron Williams higher, as did I. So Cameron Williams had a year under Stoutland as well, a further year in the system. It feels to me like they've got 3 of them, Hinton, Williams, and Bell, and it's just like, let's see if one works. 1 out of 3. Let's throw 3 darts, and if one of the athletic guys works, then we might have a future tackle. I am now fully on board to Markel Bell because I know I wrote about this for BGM, which is a really cool piece I did actually because I stole someone else's work, which is great, isn't it? So I almost wrote about Brandon Thorne's work with him. And it's which never happens. You get an hour long. It would never happen outside of offensive line because it's the kind of dudes that they are. To get to see him sit down with someone and like break down his film. And there's a couple of really good examples that I spoke about where he talks about his leverage being an issue. And he sort of explains how they counter it. But it is hard. There's once where he's trying to block a defensive tackle and he hits him in the shoulder and the defensive tackle just doesn't move because just where you hit someone, he says, I need to aim for his hip. And the only way I'm going to move him is if I hit his lower body. But I can't get there. Like this defensive tackle was low. And it was in a double team type thing. And it's like, it's interesting. I think pass pro helps a lot. And there's a lot of stuff that I really like about him. But as a guy, he seemed very, very aware. And it's hard for me to compare because I don't watch interviews of other players. But to me, he looked very, very much like he knew everything about who he was facing every week. He was saying things like, this rusher does this, so I'm doing that. He's not just like a big lump who knows he's big. He's a guy who definitely prepares. To be honest, I don't think you go on a show like that with Brandon Thorne for an hour if you don't prepare because you'll end up not looking great. So, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed that one of them works because it'd be nice not to talk about first round tackles next year just for enjoyment in a strong class. But I fear we may be back here next year.
Well, I feel like you're not going to know, right? I mean, unless Lane goes down for like half the
Eagles
season
might
and
know,
you
I
see the
guess.
guy play.
They might know, yeah. They might know from training camp and
I mean,
what's going on in practice.
They might think, but there's
yeah.
a big difference in training camp and facing off against Brian Burns. So and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think the only way tackle isn't a big question mark next year is if Lane goes down fairly early in the season. And so fingers crossed that tackle's a big question mark going into next off season.
Maybe we'll see some 6-0 line, but then Johnson's still there, isn't he? So,
yeah.
What about day 3, BLG? Sort of a depressingly boring day 3 in some ways, but I think just not many picks. I guess you want to go through one by one. Anyone that stand out? Any quick thoughts on any of the day 3 guys?
Yeah, I can run through them quick. My quick being probably not quick.
Here's 15 minutes on Cole Payton.
Cole Payton, I thought they were going to draft a quarterback. It made too much sense to me not to, from a standpoint of Tanner McKee's going to be a free agent next year. You want cheap depth because you have to pay backup quarterbacks in the NFL who are not rookies, like real money, like alarmingly expensive contracts. For the classic examples I bring up are like Zach Wilson and Jared Stidham last year. They made like $6 million plus. That's crazy. Those guys aren't even good. And you're paying them like real money to be your backup quarterback. So by contrast, Tanner McKee this year, on the final year of his deal too, he's only making like $1 million. That's a steal in the NFL. Like the difference of a $5 million that you have, you can use that to sign, like, let's say Hollywood Brown, for example. Like that's a big difference. So I thought it made sense to take a quarterback. Quarterback they took, it might not make the roster because you look at Kyle McCord last year. I think McCord was drafted. It was either 3 spots ahead or 3 spots behind Peyton. So there's no guarantee. I don't think the Eagles are going to keep 4 quarterbacks, and they currently have 4. Maybe McKee gets traded. I still think that's possible, but I don't think they're going to force that. I don't buy. There's been talk, of Cole Payton, like, oh, it could be Taysom Hill, or they're going to put him in for tush pushes. Like, I don't really see that. I don't even think he's going to be active on game day. So you wouldn't be able to do that. And also, they're just not going to take Jalen Hurts off the field for, like, Jalen Hurts is going to come off the field for when they're going to, like, potentially line up for a touchdown. Like, I don't think so. I don't think that's how that's going. So, intriguing to see what it'll look like. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they actually try to use him on special teams and stuff like they did with Taysom Hill, especially early in his career. But I'm fine with the pick. After that, what do we have? Micah Morris. It's a shot on a guy who you look at his measurables and you look at the school he played for, and you're like, man, how did this guy last to this point in the draft, especially in a weak draft? And I think that kind of clearly speaks to there are some concerns there, I think, about maybe football character and his willingness to be great. So and that's something to keep an eye on.
Just quickly on Morris, because I don't think we spoke on the public show, specifically Shane. I think drafts is interesting because you can write about him, and I wrote about Morris, and you can say like 15 good things. And then you can say one negative, and it's like the one negative might be just like you can't get over it. Like there's a rep that I watched. There was one play that stands out when I say he is upright, I mean he looks like he's standing like back straight. Like the leverage is so poor, and you're like, there's no way a coach has told him not to. Like it's obvious that you could never watch football and you look at 5 of them in a row and go, why is he standing up? Like everyone else on the line was like bending. And obviously coaches have told him that. So who knows? Genetic things matter, injuries matter, the way his body's designed. Like maybe he just can't get low and he struggles to play at that size. But there's like so many good things I liked. And then I finished the article by just being like, the leverage thing might just be like game over. So it's worth a shot, but it could be like they realized after one training camp, they're like, yeah, he's not got it. I wish I should have screenshotted the clip because it was almost quite funny. He looked like he'd been told not to bend. He was just standing dead straight, and everyone else had their knees bent and was like getting in ready to block. So yeah, he's similar, isn't he? When you look at his profile, you're like, oh, the profile seems quite good, but then there's that one fatal flaw that might be a huge flaw.
He might not even make the roster, and if he does, like, he's not going to play this year at all. I think he's like essentially a glorified practice squad member if he does make the team.
And what about the others? Anyone stand out from what they 3 7th-round picks was it in the end?
Who do we have after
Cole Wisniewski?
We have
UR Bernard and Keyshawn James Newby.
Good luck with Bernard. Nothing is there. Just Cole.
He got around that tree.
Yeah.
Oh man, that video is so funny. I kind of wanted Jonny to do a breakdown or just your thought. I don't even know how you would do that.
No, that's my problem.
Your thoughts on your Bernard.
Yeah, I could do a thoughts piece. I absolutely could. I actually am going to do one more draft piece, which, not that I've told you, but I'll tell you now, which I was going to do, like, I had an idea of, like, make or break. So, like, one thing, it was sort of going back to my fatal flaw, actually.
Yeah.
I was going to do, like, the one key trait of every player, little plug, I guess, that I think will make them, and then the one key trait that they will not make it. And I was like, what do I talk about for Bernard? Like, I really didn't know. I just struggled, like,
being able to play football,
run around the tree,
knowing the rules of the sport, knowing what to do.
Yeah, I'm not good at this stuff. So remind me, how much did Joe Mailata do? He was also like zero experience, wasn't he? But he'd played like Aussie rules or whatever.
Right. So he had like at least like kind of like a team sport, background at least somewhat professional level.
What's crazy was he was good like the first preseason, wasn't he?
Yeah.
From the jump, he showed potential. On Wisniewski, I know, Jonny, you've talked about him. They're thin at safety, as we talked about. Yeah. I think that's not really like, it's a bit much to be like, this guy's going to come in where he was drafted and be the starter right away. I think more realistically, and Howie Roseman invoking the name of Reed Blankenship with Wisniewski, like that stood out to me. Because I don't think, I think Howie was trying to do it in a way where he was not putting too much pressure on the kid, because, that's a really good outcome. If Wisniewski turns into Reed Blankenship, that's like an amazing outcome for him from where he was drafted. But, Reed Blankenship showed some promise as a rookie, but it also took him time to eventually become a full-time starter the way he did and become a good starter. So maybe Wisniewski has that in him. I think it's more realistic that he could be a backup who might have to play if there's injuries or struggles. I like that. Probably, special teams guy too with Bernard. There's nothing that who could dislike the pick. I don't think there's a single person who would be like, well, how could they take a guy who has never played football? It's like at this point in the draft, who cares? Just, why not take the guy who, when you put up a graphic of his measurables next to Myles Garrett, that he is like more physically impressive than Myles Garrett. Like that's insane and fun to just kind of keep track of for the next few years. I think it'll take him time. Like you just said, Jonny, with Mailata, they drafted him in 2018. He doesn't really start for them until 2020.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a multi-year kind of project. That's, likely best case scenario too. And then Keyshawn James Newby, poor guy who gets drafted after Bernard, and everyone's like, who cares? We just drafted Bernard. Kind of funny that for the second year in a row, they took a player in the same ilk.
So similar.
Like last year with your boy Antoine.
So similar. So similar. Like when you look at profiles and sack numbers, you're like, people that get sacks normally don't go late. But these both guys have had sacks and they've both gone late. Not like from a tiny, tiny school either. Like they've both got sacks, and normally sack production matters. It is really funny, but yeah, both of them have gone back to back. Maybe they just keep firing shots at edges who get sacks and hope one will.
And I guess they might like something about him for special teams too. Maybe they just think he can do that. Like they had Patrick Johnson in the past who did something like that for them. It's similar kind of mold of player. But yeah, so overall, it's not a draft class where I'm like, it's not like where it was in 2023 where I'm like, let's go. We got Jalen Carter, we got Nolan Smith. I'm fired up. It's a class where everyone said it wasn't a good draft class, and I don't think it's a draft class I'm blown away by. I think Lemon, is going to clearly be kind of the make or break factor here. Bernard, if he turns into anything, is a massive win. But overall, I wasn't like thrilled by it, but I think there's potential.
All right. So overall, I guess draft class, we obviously expect Mekhi Lemon to have an impact as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Eli Stowers, but really beyond that, it's all kind of depth and pieces for the future. Is that kind of the read that you have on it?
Yeah, like I think, Wisniewski, might be able to be like a role player or something, but for the most part, I just don't think you're going to get Lemon in a big way. Yes, at least if he doesn't, things have gone wrong, but that's really the only guy. I don't think Stowers is going to see a ton of playing time, even if Goddard gets hurt. I don't see him leaning on him as the guy as much as he would be part of a rotation there as a rookie.
Should we just annoy everyone now, Shane, and talk about the rest of the NFC East?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's an Eagles show, but I say annoy everyone because I think they all had annoyingly really good draft classes. So I'm going to say nice things about the other three teams, but just because you draft well, the Cowboys do it every year and they still screw up every year, so who cares? But yeah, do you want to go class by class?
Yeah, which team do we want to start with?
Just start with
first?
The Cowboys, get them out of the way. They always draft well, don't they?
Yeah, I was trying to find.
Well, suck.
Looking at the consensus draft grade report card that I forget who puts it out every year, but the Giants had the number 3 class, the Cowboys had the number 5 class, the Eagles were number 8, and then Washington was number 13. So Giants and Cowboys specifically seem to have really good classes.
Well, Caleb Downs will be top 5 on most people's board. They got him for positional value, didn't they? Can I just say my lovely plug, which I feel like I got the wrong team. So I've tweeted this, so you guys may know this, but I ranked I think I watched 120 or 130, and I put 15 or so in green, right? And the green were they're great Eagles fits. If I got 1, I'd be happy. And I got Markel Bell. So I was like, that's okay. 2 would have been nice. But I never would have had Eli Stowers or Makai Lemon. I didn't have a single receiver in greens. I didn't think they'd go one. Cowboys' first 3 picks were all in green. That's nearly impossible. Caleb Downs, Malachi Lawrence, and Jayshon Barham. I only had 3 edges in green, and the Cowboys took 2 of them. That almost, to say they're copying the Fangio type would be an understatement. That's quite hilarious. I watched, I think, about 19 edge defenders. I stuck 3 in green, and the Cowboys took 2 of them. Almost seems impossible, and I hate it because I love Malachi Lawrence, and he was my guy, and now I have to root against my guy. So it's either I look dumb or the Cowboys look good, and I'm well, neither way I win here. Arm I didn't love as much at 92. I just thought he was a good fit for the Fangio stuff. The one I was really surprised about was they got LT Overton at 137, and I had him in the 4th round. I know a lot of people were higher on him, and even Devin Moore, the cornerback they got in the 4th as well. I had him as a 3rd, 4th. They just took a lot of names, as Jerry likes to do, that seem like they've fallen. This guy shouldn't be here. We'll take him. But I sometimes feel with a draft that works. Yeah, I just thought to plug myself that I clearly understood the Fangio scheme. Maybe I'm a Christian Parker specialist, not a Vic Fangio specialist, it turns out, because the Eagles didn't take the players I thought they would. But I should have bet on my life savings on the Cowboys draft class, because I'd have got some good odds if I had predicted that.
You did once say that Johnny Wilson was a bigger and better George Kittle. And so hopefully this scouting continues to bear out in the Cowboys class. But yeah, I thought Caleb Downs was one of 2 blue chip players I had in the draft. And there's positional value stuff with safety. And there were some reported medical concerns with a degenerative knee issue. And obviously we don't know what his career will play out to look like. I feel really confident he is an awesome football player. I don't know what the longevity will be. I hope for his sake it's long, and I hope that the Cowboys do what they normally do with good players and don't pay them, and then he ends up somewhere else in 4 or 5 years. But I really loved Caleb Downs at 11. And then Malachi Lawrence was the guy that I missed on my initial tape watch throughs and went back to after Jonny and I talked some. And
20.
Yeah, I thought it was a little early, but still overall, I liked what they did in the draft. And they had 2 firsts, but then they don't pick till 92. So it gets kind of hard, but Caleb Downs is the steal of the draft for me. If he turns out to be able to play a full NFL career, I think he's going to be awesome. So I hate that he went to the Cowboys, but I did think that they did a good job early on.
What about you, BLG? Any Cowboys takes? Say bad things because we've said good things.
I know. If Lemon's good, no one's going to care about those 2 4th-round picks they gave to the Cowboys to trade up. And I don't think that was terrible value from, the draft pick standpoint or the consensus in terms of where the Eagles are taking a player clearly that is in the last group, in that group that they had there towards the top. They were motivated to move up for him for that reason because Lemon was in that tier. So I think the process behind it is, fine for the Eagles. It's sound. I don't think it's reckless, but it's also okay to look at the results too. And if those 4th-round picks hit for the Cowboys and the Eagles, are having buyer's remorse of Lemon, that's going to suck. But we'll see if that's the case. I think as a whole, I'm bullish on the Cowboys this year. Unfortunately, I hate saying that, but not to do anything in the playoffs. Let's be clear, because they're going to always fall short there. We can just say that as a trope, but it's not. Dak Prescott, people love whatever. Oh, the film, this, whatever. He's going to disappoint. He does it all the time. He's done it consistently throughout his career in the biggest moments. It's kind of really the inverse of Jalen Hurts in that regard. So I'm not worried about that, but I do think their offense is still really good, assuming they keep Pickens. And I think you look at this draft that they had here, and that defense doesn't need to be amazing for them to, win the NFC East this year. It just has to not be a total disgrace and failure that it was last season. And I think between adding Christian Parker, and Caleb Downs and some of these guys they've drafted here. I think they have enough now, or at least moving in the direction where they can be, even if they're like whatever, like below average defense, but just not totally terrible. I think that's kind of good enough for them to pair with the offense that they have to unfortunately contend for the NFC East lead.
Be honest, I'm looking at their offense on depth chart, and it's strong. It is strong. Pickens, Lamb, and even that Ryan Flooney guy popped out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Then you've got like Marcus Valdes-Scantling as your like fourth, get down the field. Devontae Turpin as your fifth. Offensive
but to
line
be
still
fair,
looks
it
good.
has been for years. The defense has been the major issue.
Offensive line looks good.
And that's
still.
what they went in on in the draft this year, was trying to fix the defense.
Maybe Javonte Williams slows down and the running game takes a step back. That's definitely a possibility. But like even Ferguson's really good at tight end. Their offense looks good. The question will be, as you said, can they stop anyone? They'll need players to play early. I think Devin Moore will play early. Malachi Lawrence will have to do something early. Maybe even Overton has to play snaps early. So they need rookies to contribute. But I weirdly enjoy it when the Cowboys are good, as long as the Eagles beat them. Like it's for me, it's the big rivalry. Like I've always had it. I don't mind the Cowboys being good, like BLG said, because I don't think they're going to win it all. Because I think culturally there is a problem there with QB and organizationally in playoffs. I think that stuff absolutely matters in high-level sports. I always have. So, obviously, I want the Eagles to win the East, but I'm okay with a good Cowboys. A little bit of those games are brilliant. When you win them, it makes them a little bit more sweet when you know you're playing a very good team.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go to the Giants, who had 2 picks in the top 10. Select Arvell Reese and Francis Mauanoa. And then they pick up Colton Hood at the top of the 2nd round and Malachi Fields at the top of the 3rd round, and then had a trio of 6th round picks. I loved what the Giants did. And I mean, you have to wait for they did have 2 top 10 picks, so you would expect to be taking good players there. And it's worth mentioning, the last time they had 2 top 10 picks, they also drafted an edge rusher and a tackle and turned out really poorly. But I think Mauanoa is probably going to play interior, not tackle for them. But Colton Hood is a guy that I really liked. There's some medical stuff with him that is really the only reason I think that he was probably available where he was. And so it's another one of those risk reward medical type things for them. If he turns out to be healthy and have a long career, that's probably going to be a really good value for them. And then I liked Malachi Fields as well. I thought they gave up too much to go get him, but I liked the player. So I found myself really liking the things that the Giants did on draft day. What about you, BLG?
I have to see it with the Giants to give them the benefit of the doubt in the bigger picture that we're talking about here. I know they bring in, Harbaugh and someone who's, actually calling the shots instead of Joe Shane, or at least it seems to be that way. Oh, maybe they're starting to turn it around. I actually think Dart could be good. I just don't think he's going to stay healthy at all, which is a big problem given the way he plays. But again, I need to see proof of concept with them. They've had so many different coaches and GMs where it didn't work out, and I thought it might start to when they hired Dable and Shane. I was like, okay, maybe they're actually figuring this out a little bit, and clearly wasn't the case. This could be the start of a turnaround for them, but I'm just not going to truly believe that until I see it. The Giants fans are certainly believing it. I was looking over at Big Blue View, which is, the Giants counterpart of SB Nation, the Giants version of BGN, and they have the Giants sweeping the Eagles this year. So they're clearly very excited for this new era.
All right.
Yeah,
Jonny?
I didn't love Colton Hood or Fields as much, so I wasn't that fussed about them. But I guess I like the first 2, and I really, really like Reese. I didn't think he'd go, but I thought he might go earlier. But I would just say that sort of how you're going to use him, to BLG's point, I think their class is a bit more, I don't trust them, whereas the thing about the Cowboys is I trust that those players are going to fit the scheme. It's very easy for me to see how, as I said, Malachi Lawrence and Barham fit, whereas the Cowboys or the Giants are a bit I don't really know how it's all going to work. I think they've said they're going to start Reese at weak side linebacker and see how things go. But I think he's a very, very good talent. I didn't love the the Giants overall as much. The Cowboys to me was a better class.
The fit with Reese is weird, as much as they've invested into edge, and then they're like, well, we're actually just going to play him at off-ball linebacker. And it's well, then why not draft Sonny Styles, who's actually an off-ball linebacker?
It may have just been a case of they just want the best player. Figure out after new head coach wants his guy, whatever. Culture wise, if he fits, I think he gives you more than Sonny Styles, like versatility wise. Obviously, so maybe that's why they've done it. Maybe they'll start him there and they'll move him. But I liked it. To me, it was more. I preferred the Cowboys if I had to rank them.
Yeah.
Okay, so then with Washington.
Yeah, we go to the Commanders, who did select Sonny Styles at 7 overall.
Still can't say the Commanders, by the way. It's not a real. I just say Washington now.
And then they take Antonio Williams at 71, and they don't pick again till 147. So Styles is a good player, and they have massive holes really everywhere on their defense. The fit is weird to like take an off-ball linebacker at 7 overall when you have like nobody on your defense that I trust at really any position. But we've talked about the draft and how it was a little weaker. And so I was conflicted on this. I like the player. I don't necessarily like the value there, but I understand it. So I was lower on the Commanders than the other two, but I do think Styles is a really good player.
Yeah, I think these sins of the Commanders, past have kind of, catching up a little bit in terms of not having the draft pick email. And I know this year's class was because they traded for Tunsil, who, like, in a vacuum, that's a perfectly acceptable trade to make for the player they got, and then just had to pay this offseason, by the way. But in a vacuum, okay, yes. But in the grand scheme of things, when you're acquiring all these older players like they did with, Lattimore, and I would throw Debo in there. I've seen Commanders fans who would be like, there's only 1 year for Debo. It's like, yeah, but you paid him $17 million. That's a ton of money. And also, 49ers probably would have cut him if you just kind of waited it out a little bit longer, and you wouldn't have had to quite pay all of that. So I think they've made mistakes that, are limiting them now. And you look at, again, the bigger picture, they don't have these young, exciting players that they should have been adding to surround Jaden Daniels with there. And they have just a few picks this year. And I like the Styles pick for them. Probably no Bobby Wagner coming back. So that makes sense. But I think when you look at, again, it all comes back to the bigger picture and kind of just being talent poor on that roster. And it would have been really nice to just have more picks to kind of build up and surround Daniels with, and I just don't think they've done a good job of doing that at all.
I don't think they're that good on offense either, like depth chart wise. When you look at it, like when you see, because like I like Antonio Williams actually as like a decent slot. I think fantasy wise, I like him this year, but he's not scary. Terry McLaurin wasn't scary last year, I don't think. Despite the name. And even at running back, they've got a bunch of dudes. Like maybe one of them's all right. Like one of them, Allen, who they drafted, obviously, Rashad White. I don't dislike, actually. I quite like Rashad White. Didn't really see it with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who people seem to talk about being their guy. They just got a lot of like guys. They're hoping Josh Conley can play, obviously, a tackle. Yeah, I'm not sure. They seem like a team like last year. They were obvious to predict not be good, despite what a lot of people were saying. I feel like this year they're similar. I think it's pretty obvious when you look at the rosters that the Eagles and Cowboys are still significantly above, despite the concerns I think everyone has about the Eagles staff and how that will all work. I think just on a pure talent level, when you look at them side by side, the Eagles and Cowboys are significantly better, in my opinion, than the other two. And whereas I think the Giants maybe have more hope coaching-wise, I'm not sure Washington do. Like, is David Blau and Dan Quinn going to carry them? I'm not convinced. At least with the Giants, you can say like they've got a unique culture fit who can maybe bring like a total change to an organization. So I feel relatively good again about not worrying too much about the other two. I think the Cowboys are the clear issue next year.
Yeah. All right. We had a comment here from Yako asking, now that the draft capital is spent, who won the Tunsil trade? I don't know what got drafted with each of those picks, but I feel like I could probably say without knowing that even that the Commanders, I still think, won that trade. But okay. So any thoughts on that from either of you guys?
When was he traded? Was it last March? It was before the draft last year, wasn't it?
I know it was like a 3rd and a 7th in 2025.
Yeah, I'm always like
a 2nd and
in general,
else.
Philosophically, I'm fine with trading for good players. When you know players are good, I'm okay with it. A bit like the Jonathan Grenard thing, but I had to pay him and trade for him. Like, yeah, but I know he's good. Sometimes we overrate. The thought of having someone with a pick is like, but it could be this. I'm like, yeah, but it probably won't be. So yeah, Laramie Tunsil was still a very good player.
The Commanders gave up 38 this past draft. So that was Traden Stukes, who went to the Raiders ultimately. Like, some people liked him.
Well, now you've changed it. I like Stukes, so everything I said was wrong.
There you go. And I think 106 in the 4th round, which is, this is an early 2nd round pick and an early 4th round pick. And that was Fabechi Nuwawu from Oklahoma, guard. So there's your 2 picks there.
Yes, doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
Yeah. Well, there were picks in last year's draft too.
Tunsil's only 31 as well, and tackle seems to be able to play, don't they?
Yeah.
Right, Shane, we said we'd keep it short and then we're keeping BLG for too long talking about stuff. So trying to do a very, very,
you
very
said
quick.
We should keep it short, and I said you would waffle too much and that wouldn't happen.
That is a deal, but I'm also, this is covering my nerves that I'm feeling. So should we do a very quick
Jonny,
schedule
did you see
talk
the picture
for anyone out there
Slack?
Who is into schedule talk? I can tell you I'm not predicting every game before you ask, Shane. We're not doing win-loss of the whole season. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, so we are going to talk. So schedule got revealed. Just brief reactions to the schedule and thoughts. I feel like I'm old. I'm the old man that yells at the clouds because like they start leaking games on Twitter and people are like freaking out about it. And I'm just like, I do not care. Get back to me next week when the full schedule is out. And I also still mostly don't care, but I get annoyed by the schedule release every year. One, because of how big of a deal the NFL makes it and how long they drag it out. And two, because of how inequitable the schedule is every single year. And so this particular season, the Eagles kind of got screwed over on the schedule. That's not been the case always. I think last year they were positive in net rest differential, if I remember right. But second worst this year, facing 4 teams coming off of bye weeks, while it's like 19 teams don't face any teams that do that.
That's all I care about.
Yeah. Just to the annoyance of the fans. Like they also have a game on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve. And so I hate the schedule every year. But if we get around that, the schedule, I mean, you've got a tough stretch late in the year with like Seattle, Houston, San Francisco. And you've kind of got, I guess it's not you wouldn't call it a tough stretch, but you get at Chicago versus Los Angeles versus the Rams kind of early in the season. And so I do feel like you're going to hit the ground running and kind of get a feel of where your team is at with trips to Chicago and hosting the Rams. And then you're going to get another real strong test at the end of the year. And there's some easy games spaced out through there. I don't think the schedule is particularly difficult, but I do kind of like that you don't play a bunch of weak teams early. I like that we kind of get a test and see this is where the Eagles stack up against some other good teams. So BLG, what were your thoughts just looking at the schedule when it came out?
I think it's not that bad from an opponent perspective, which we already knew because like you talk about, it's a formulaic schedule that we basically know right after the regular season ends in terms of who they're going to play. And actually it's favorable in part because of like just how things lined up with the divisional finishes. So where like, the Eagles are playing the Steelers this year. The Cowboys have to play the Ravens. I think the Commanders have to play the Bengals. It could be worse in some of those regards. But in terms of the actual, machinations of how it was laid out, I don't think it's ideal. They have 4 teams coming off a bye this year. I don't think that matters if the Eagles are really good. I don't think it's going to do them in. But if you're kind of like at a point where things could kind of go either way between, being a bad team or a good team, those advantages could work against you ultimately or contribute to it, what could be a down season. And it's not even just that it's teams coming off a bye. It's also 2 of those games. The first one is after the London game, where the Eagles are coming home from an international trip to then play. Who is that? That's the Panthers.
Carolina.
Yeah. Okay. So you're coming off an international trip against
and
the
that's
Panthers.
Quite team. Unusual. Teams normally get the bye after coming to London.
Well, so I read something about that today, actually. It was in the Inquirer where teams used to, I think, have more kind of say in terms of if they wanted the bye after the international trip. But the NFL has pretty much done away with that now.
There's so many now, isn't there? So it's like we can't all get byes after every international trip.
So that was interesting. But then, like, the next one is they're coming, the Commanders are coming off a bye, a division, opponent, mind you, which I think is not really a great way to go about that. And the Eagles are coming off Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. So it's a short week for the Eagles. We then they're playing in Philly. I mean, it's not a long drive down to Washington, D.C., but still, you have to go from Philly to D.C. on a short week while the Commanders are coming off a bye. That's not good. And then again, there's 2 more games like that the Eagles are coming off. And it's possible they'll do well in those games because I think the other 2 opponents are the Giants and another division game, and then the Colts. It's possible the Eagles do well in those games. I'm not saying they're unwinnable games now, but that's like a significant disadvantage to me.
Yeah, I'll give very quick takeaway, Shane. So I feel like media, and this is not you, BLG, but a lot of media talk about schedule and they talk about like their own schedules. It's like, oh, this is game. And I feel like fans don't care as much about media travel schedule as much as the media do.
Yeah.
So the things I only look for, the first thing I go to straight away is like travel and bye weeks. And it seems like they got stitched up. They travel a lot. I know London plays a part in that, but still a lot of teams playing international games these days. And coming off the bye, it seems like they got stitched up. The only thing I would say is that I think the other thing I look for is like stretch of games. I think you never want like 4 or 5 in a row that are, I think it's okay. You mentioned, Shane, they've got a little test earlier on with like Bears, Rams, Jags. But even then after that, like the next 5 games include Panthers, Commanders, Giants and Steelers. Those are 4 or 5 are pretty good. The last 5 I always look at are not terrible. I'm not sure about the Colts as much next year. I think Texans, 49ers, Giants is a tough end. But I don't think it's the worst end. At least you get the Giants last week of the season. I feel like there was always going to be a hard schedule because you're playing the number 1 pick schedule. Obviously, it's in the Eagles' first place schedule. I think overall, I don't see anything, as BLG said, that's like absolutely disastrous. But I do think the teams off the bye is tough.
I will say one thing I love about the schedule is we don't have the play the same divisional opponent twice in 3 weeks.
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, that sucks.
It seems like that's
sucks
become
from a content point of view as well.
Well, and even not even just a content point of view, just a enjoyment of the game. Like you just played this team 2 weeks ago. What changed? And so I am glad they avoided that. That's become a really big feature of the NFL schedule that I just hate. And so I'm glad the Eagles at least don't have that this year. I mentioned this before we went on the air, but I thought it was interesting that 5 of the Eagles' 6 divisional games happen week 12 or earlier.
Mm.
And so from week 13 to 17, they have no divisional games,
Might
which is
be
weird
bad this year, considering we've got a new offensive coaching staff, but who knows?
Yeah. I just think it's a little weird because they do tend to backload those divisional games. And I've put out there for years that like I think you should play divisional opponents weeks 1 through 3 and then 16 through 18 because I think that just maximizes like the importance of your early and late games. And I do like that they start with the divisional opponent week 1 this year. That's something that I like to see. And so I thought that was interesting, but yeah, that was
and one thing I forgot to say as well, Shane, last one, and I'm done with my scheduled talk till week 1, is I like the bye. Can't complain about the bye. An early bye sucks, I think, when you've got players that are banged up midway points. It feels
well, you
pretty
say that,
reasonable.
Johnny. But the 2024 Eagles had a week 5 bye.
Well, it's almost like the schedule doesn't matter.
Or 2024. Yeah.
It might be the schedule doesn't matter.
I was going to say, hypothetically,
in a vacuum, I would rather not have a. But if you get the first round pick, of course, or if you get the first round bye, you could argue that you get your own bye week later on. So it's not the worst thing having it early, isn't it? If you get the 1 seed.
It all depends on when you have a key player that gets banged up, honestly.
Exactly.
So, like, hypothetically, middle of the season is where you want it. But realistically, like, if Lane Johnson gets a high ankle sprain in week 4, you'd think, man, I wish we had a week 5 bye this year. So it just really depends.
Yeah, I think they've only got 2 Thursday, haven't they? There's no Thursday before the bye, which is good because they can be the things that can really catch you out.
And the Thursdays are Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Yeah, true. They're all weird games, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. Well, before we get out of here, BLG, I've got to ask you this because Johnny wanted to make sure we got a record prediction from everybody. So I'll let you and Johnny fight over who goes first here. But give me your official.
He's definitely already got
change
one.
It has to be locked in for the season record prediction, and you can tell us results by week if you would like.
I'll spare you that. You can check out Bleeding Green Nation for my game-by-game win-loss prediction.
Yes.
You know, got to check that out on the site to get that part of it. But for overall record, it's going to be, and I'll preface this by saying that I've been only 1 game off each of the last 3 years in terms of my initial record prediction. And I will curse the Eagles for resting their starters in week 18 last year. When I said at the time before that game, they should have played them. And had they did, they probably would have won that game. Then I would have been perfect last year because I had them going 12-5. But I have them going 11-6 this year. I think that they're kind of a hard team to predict, you know, with the Jalen Hurts, you know, question of like, how's it going to work? The new offense, Sean Mannion. That's all a question mark, right? Like we're doing a lot of projecting there. The biggest concern with me about the Eagles is not safety, although I understand why people have a lot of attention there. It's the offensive line, which sunk the season last year. And now We don't know what we're getting out of Landon Dickerson and or Cam Jurgens this year. It's possible they'll rebound and be healthy and be good. Maybe not. And also, hey, you got worse offensive line coach, so I don't like that. So the offense is a bit of a question mark, but I think they still have enough talent to win double-digit games, in large part because the defense is so good. I think they could have the best defense, or at least one of the very best defenses in the NFL still, with all the talent and the coaching they have on that side of the ball. So I don't know what to expect on the offense, but I do feel good about the defense.
Hey, you never know. The new offensive line coach could be the Tom Brady to Jeff Stoutland's Drew Bledsoe here.
I wrote down 10, Shane. I wrote down 10. I think
10
they'll
and 7.
just get to double digits, like BLG said, based on talent alone. And I think record predictions this year are even harder because I really don't know what to expect from the offense. So I'm with BLG. I think the defense will carry them to double digit. If the offense is good, I think the sky's the limit because I think the defense will be good because I think Fangio is just that good. And as long as you got Quinion and Gudijin out there, etc., I think you're going to be fine. So it's almost like the offense, it all depends on how the offense looks. And are you going to give us a wonderful prediction as well, Shane?
Well, which 7 games are they losing, Johnny?
Oh, what do you want week by week?
What will the point differential be?
Well, give me a second. Let me tell you the exact score, Shane, as well.
Yes.
So
please.
obviously, I have not gone through the games. I'm basing it on gut feel and ignoring the schedule because teams that we think could be good could not. They feel like they should be a double-digit win team, in my opinion. I feel like they've got the talent to be a double-digit win team, but because of the offense, I'm keeping it on the lower
looking
side.
at the opponents and just in my head thinking win-loss, I got to 12-5, and then I just knocked it down 1 to 11-6 for scheme change. And that's what I kind of stuck at was 11-6. And another low-key concern that you mentioned, I was on a podcast last week, and as somebody asked me what the biggest weakness was heading into the year, and we'd already talked about safety at that point in a different question. So I said, just so I don't say safety again, I'll say kicker, because Jake Elliott's been among the worst kickers in the NFL 2 years in a row, and that's concerning going into this year too. It's a under the radar concern, but I went 11-6, so hopefully BLG's streak continues, and I'm just grabbing onto his bootstraps here and trying to get within a game with him.
I'm disappointed Johnny didn't predict a draw. I mean, that would have been on brand. I feel like
that
should
would
have predicted a tie in there.
That if I had thought about it for any more than 1 minute, that would have made a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
If they tie the Jags?
Yeah, I was going to say it's only fitting if the draw happens in Jackson or in London.
Right. Speaking of draws, we need to wrap this up, Shane, because I'm staring at my phone, and as things stand, it's going well. So I need to go and pour myself a drink and possibly run around my living room in about 5 minutes. So before we do that, I must add final thoughts before you send it over to BLG for his final thoughts. I can confirm, for anyone who has lasted the hour wondering, the full English was very full English. It was it. It had all the parts. So shout out to wherever that place is. It did it correctly. It wasn't a touristy fake version. It was the real deal. I think I even saw a little bit of black pudding in there, which is,
yes.
You don't even get that everywhere here. That's very traditional.
It was good. I liked it.
Yeah. So there we go.
All right. BLG, any final thoughts, anything you want to plug before you get out of here?
As always, bleedinggreennation.com. And as I may recommend, signing up for a account on the site, because then you get to see fewer ads than you would see if you are not logged in to your account. In addition, you can help contribute on the site in terms of we have the feed on the side, and literally anyone can post anything in there. If you see something of interest, or you have a question, or you want to start a conversation about a certain topic, which I think is especially fun to do this time of year when there's not as much to talk about, you can do it there in the feed on Bleeding Green Nation, in addition to obviously commenting on the articles. We like to hear from everyone, especially, I know Jonny is very good about responding to, people who comment and ask questions on the articles on Bleeding Green Nation.
Commenters get a bad rap online. BGN comments have always been pretty good. The feed is good as well. I underuse it. During the season, it'll be good, but not just plugging because we work for it. I would say 95% of comments on my articles are good.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, BLG, we certainly thank you for coming on the show. Always good to chat with you. We'll have to get together once training camp's going and get some thoughts from you there, and and maybe get a season prediction show going again later this year. But thanks for taking the time to come on. You guys be sure you head over to Bleeding Green Nation, support all of the work that BLG and Jonny do over there. You can also check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Eagles Film Room. There's a lot of all 22 stuff up on these Eagles draft prospects and a lot of content that we're excited about for the upcoming season, to weekly film breakdowns and things. So you can check that out. In the meantime, you can follow us all on Twitter. Brandon is at Brandon Gowton, I believe. That's your handle, correct? Yeah, I forgot to write that one down. Jonny is at Jonny Page 9. I'm at Shane Huff NFL, and we will catch you guys next time.